Now, we started this conversation tonight with Mehdi Hassan talking about journalists in Gaza. It's a particularly interesting week. We are confused as to why Luxon's like, I might tell you later in the week about Gaza. Don't ask too yet. I've got a secret coming up. But there has been some talk about it. Jack Tame covered it in the weekend, and also, once again, we might go back to breakfast because Luxon was asked about it this morning as well. Winston Peters off to the UN. Will New Zealand recognise Palestine as a state? Is the story on Q&A. It's not an interview by Jack this time around, but it's more of a story. Interesting watching, though. Have a look.
Is this the week New Zealand will officially recognise a Palestinian state?
Yes.
The Foreign Minister, Winston Peters, will attend the UN General Assembly in New York in the next couple of days. His visit comes as UN investigators accuse Israel of committing genocide in Gaza, a charge that Israel denies. One US correspondent, Logan Church, is live for us in New York this morning. Kia ora, Logan. So the UN Commission of Inquiry says Israel has committed genocide in Gaza. How is that finding going to impact events this week?
Well, the crisis in Gaza, Jack, was already in the spotlight. This has just made it even sharper so, with an increasing number of nations condemning Israel's actions, especially in the Gaza Strip. And already there are a number of sessions planned at the UN General Assembly to discuss what to do. Interestingly, though, who will not be there will be the Palestinian Authority president, who has attended in previous years. He'll be addressing the UN General Assembly via a pre-recorded video message, and that's because he is one of about 80 Palestinian officials who have had their visas revoked by the US government, which is highly unusual. However, who will be here is...
That's good, eh? Land of the free, home of the brave. Not that brave, though. Did you hear that they call the secret security on Gavin Newsom today?
No, what?
The secret, is that what they're called? The SS? No, that's not the right one, is it? What am I trying to say? Secret police? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because he said something like, what's her name? The one who kills her puppies was going to have a very bad day. And that apparently was taken as a threat by some lawmakers. And so he had the Secret Service, that's what it is, called on him. To which he then tweeted out Donald Trump saying Bernie Sanders is going to have a really bad day from a wee while ago, and asked if the Secret Service would check out that threat as well. Gavin Newsom I don't necessarily like his politics. He's a little bit too mainstream for me, but he's on fire a little bit with his attack mode at the moment. They've just in California. Sorry, Jack, we'll come back to you in a sec. In California, they've just made a ruling that police officers, ICE agents, are not allowed to cover their faces and must have identifying information on their uniform, so their names or a number. Now, I'm actually cool with I think a number's fine, because then you have an access point. You know, like I can understand how, I'm not supporting ICE obviously, but how some police might not want to have their personal details out there, but a number, a way to track them, sort of thing, should something go wrong. So it'll be interesting to see if the ICE raids drop off a little bit in California, or
California's pushback has been pretty wild, right? They did the chasing them down the streets. They've had I've seen tow trucks pick up the ICE cars, the ICE trucks and stuff, and drive off.
Yeah. So we'll see. But the icing will either drop off. I think it'll either drop off, or they'll just ignore it and they'll wear protective. Because, I mean, if they wanted to be dicks, you know what they could do? They could wear N95s and go, we're just being COVID conscious.
It's true.
And then they probably couldn't have anything said about them. All right. Sorry, Jack. Let's get back to the important conversation.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He's expected to land here in New York and attends the UN General Assembly. Now, it's not expected that he will receive a sympathetic audience or speak in front of a sympathetic audience for reasons I mentioned before, but it's also reported that he's been invited to travel to Washington, D.C. afterwards to meet with Donald Trump. Now, Netanyahu's expected appearance at the United Nations has already been met with protests here in New York, and more are expected during the week as well. It's also worth mentioning, of course, we've spoken over recent months how the International Criminal Court has an arrest warrant out for Benjamin Netanyahu, but it's important to note that...
And remember, evangelical Christians in New Zealand, Luxon said if Netanyahu came to New Zealand, they would be kind of duty bound to fulfill what the IJCC or the ICC has ruled. Just remember that, evangelical Christians, he's your boy. And he wants to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu, just CEO. Well done.
under
Real
Donald
mum
Trump's
Danny as
leadership,
well.
the United States does not recognise the authority of the International Criminal Court at the moment, but it certainly attends time for these high-level talks to be taking place.
Yeah, so the Foreign Minister flies out today. What are Winston Peters' plans?
Yeah, it's likely he just landed or is about to land.
I bet you most of them are surrounded by whiskey and cigars. So whatever Winston's plans are, there is a smoking jacket and a glass of whiskey involved. That would be, I could just see Winston at one of those clubs you see in the movies that only members are allowed to go to. He would fit very well in one of those clubs with a whiskey in one hand and a cigar in the other. Hey, old Winnie.
And fish heads, he loves those.
Say again?
Fish heads, he loves those.
Yeah, there you go.
York City. At this stage, he's scheduled to speak to the United Nations General Assembly a little bit later on this week. Of course, with these things, as you know, the timetable constantly changes. But it is expected that he might use that opportunity to state New Zealand's position when it comes to the recognising the state of Palestine as an actual state. Why do we think that? Well, we know that the New Zealand Cabinet has been discussing it, and other nations, including Australia, Canada, the United Kingdom, and France, are expected to also use the opportunity of this year's General.
I mean, if you haven't heard, that was done today. Those three countries said yes today. It is a bit of a shame that we come from this history of kind of being at the pointy end of these world issues, whether it's the nukes or whether it's women in the vote, or and this one we're lagging behind. There is a conversation, I will ask you about this next, Jordan, to wrap up. There is a conversation about, you know, I think it's fair to say of other political parties who have been running this country, they also haven't done it. So whilst we can say now is the time, I think it's also credible and fair to go, yeah, but wasn't 3 years ago also the time? You know, I mean, like just saying.
Assembly at the UN to make that statement themselves, all to advance the long-term goal of a two-state solution to the crisis in the Middle East there. However, considering the ongoing humanitarian situation on the ground, it is a goal that certainly seems a long way away. And it's also worth noting that America and Israel has been opposing efforts to even discuss this at this year's United Nations National Assembly. Of course, Gaza is only one of an increasing laundry list of issues the world seems to be facing. The foreign minister is expected to meet also with representatives from Ukraine. We know, of course, that New Zealand, not just diplomatically, but militarily, also has been supporting Ukraine during its defense against Russia's invasion. And remember, climate change, well, that's still happening, and Pacific Islands are still dealing with the fact that their countries are slowly, or in some cases not so slowly, falling into the ocean. So we're also expecting meetings to take place with Pacific leaders attending the United Nations this week as well. As you know, Jack, having covered these events before, often they come, there's a bit of a palaver, and then they go. However, especially after some of the conversations I've been having behind the scenes with UN officials, it certainly seems that this year the stakes are higher really than ever before.
Yeah. Hey, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. That is One News.
We do. We appreciate your time.
Cheers.
Cheers for that. Yeah, so I think it's going to be really interesting actually, because there'll be many supporters of, in particular, National. I think you have more of an evangelical Christian base following National than the other two. But when they recognise Gaza, I think that's probably going to happen this week. I mean, how could you not if Australia, the UK, and I've lost the third one already, Canada did it today?
Yes, Canada.
You would look like a limp-wristed, weak, piss in the air, you know, just a terrible, terrible look if you didn't. So let's be positive and say it's probably going to happen this year. That's going to piss off a bunch of voters on that side. My question is, and I'd still like to understand this, does this need to be cabinet approved? Because if it needs to be cabinet approved, that means that Peters and Seymour have to say yes as well. So interesting to know what the situation is there. But yeah, a couple of things, Jordan. Love to get your thoughts on that. But also, you know, there was a bombardment in 2011, 2012, 2013. There was another time it was in the headlines. We could have done it then. Other countries have done it for a very long time. It's beyond time, and Labor has some responsibility for that as well. I think Chewie said they were taking it to the last election. I don't remember them talking much about it, but I think he said that they were going to use it. They were going to recognise them this term, but is that too little? I mean, nothing's too little, too late. We want them to do it, but yeah, this is not all at the feet of National, is what I'm saying.
No, but I mean, we're here now, and Nationals in government. I think probably could have happened before, but I think I feel like it was a bit of a tangent. But I think as New Zealand, you mentioned before how we kind of see ourselves as being at the pinnacle of these kinds of movements, and it kind of feels embarrassing that we're not at the forefront of this. And I think we often look back at the 1981 Springbok tour, and I think New Zealanders as a whole really identify with that, and we really go, yeah, look at us, that was New Zealand. But it was New Zealand, but it wasn't our government. That was a national government at the time that brought that in. Remember, it was a Labour government that said in the 70s, no, we're not going to do the Springbok tour as an apartheid state. And then the National Party after that used that against them and said, oh, look, we should have just done it. We're going to keep politics out of sports. And they brought them in. And then 1981, we had the protests that Nelson Mandela acknowledged. And we as a collective all identify not with the government of the time, we identify with the protesters of the time.
Yeah,
we all see ourselves as that New Zealand. We're the people in helmets throwing, bags of flour onto the field. That's what we identify ourselves with. And so I think I'm just interested to see how it's embarrassing now that our government is this shitty on this. But I think in the future, we'll look back at the people crossing the Auckland Harbour Bridge and we'll see that as New Zealand. Not
the
Luxon.
difference. One of the big differences, though, is the Springbok tour. New Zealand's protesters could affect a change to the issue. They could stop the games. They could get the headlines back in South Africa for stopping the games. Now the guys going across the bridge, which is amazing. Obviously, we are fully in support of it all. What they're doing is they're making a statement that needs to reach the other side of the world. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it feels like I hear what you're saying, and I agree that we follow the people, because so what we need in this instance is we do need that pressure that the marchers are putting on to then be picked up by the government to then make the decision. Whereas for the Springbok tour, there was really nothing our government could do. They couldn't change the law in South Africa, but they could stop a rugby team playing. This feels like it's slightly, they can change, the government can quote change a law. They can choose to therefore acknowledge this group. So I think what you're saying is both right and not quite a parallel, because for us to evoke the change in this, we need government inclusion. We need government to be involved. For us to evoke a change of the Springbok tour, we needed to stop the Springbok tour. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It does make me
you could also argue though that stopping a rugby game didn't change apartheid. So you could go both ways. I'm seeing it.
I'm interested to see how Winston wants to play that, because it's really Winston's games, right? It'll be him that announces the decision, wouldn't it?
Well, he's gonna. He'll. I mean, it does feel a bit like, I'm sorry to sound flippant, but kind of Gaza Idol.
Yeah.
Is Winston Peters going to announce it? And the winner is right after this break. It does feel a bit like that, That sounds terrible.
No, that's it. This whole thing of like, oh, it's not if, but it's when. And it's just like, well, if it's when, if it's not if, then do it. Yeah. But it is, Winston is looking for a power play, I think. We're coming into election year next year. I think he probably wants to distance himself from the other three and make a big, large statement. Yeah. But it's just about what voter base do they want to piss off and what voter base do they want to appease. Yeah. And look, the last little clip for the videos today, back to breakfast we go, because it's only 60 seconds. But Jenny May did ask Luxon about the recognising of Gaza. So you know what you're going to hear. No, it's not a matter of if but when. But give him the chance to explain it.
News this morning: UK, Australia and Canada formally recognised a Palestinian state. Why is it taking us so long?
Well, it's not a race. Some of our friends have recognised Palestine, others haven't. We've always said it's a question of when, not if.
Beatrice is the thing, the ones who haven't. Like USA and Israel, are those the friends we're talking about? Which friends are we talking about, out of interest? Which ones?
If we've had preliminary discussions, we're going to keep monitoring the Middle East situation. We'll make a final cabinet decision towards the end of this week, and then Winston Peters will share.
Okay, well, he said a final cabinet decision.
Yeah.
So therefore, but I guess they could they could abstain. This is not going to a vote in the House, so I guess they can make a decision without all of cabinet agree. I'm just interested to see whether Winston and Seymour have to give it the thumbs up as well, because if they do, then they also own it for the voting base who aren't going to be happy with this on that side of politics.
Seymour will say no 100% of the time.
Yeah, I think so too. So it'll be interesting to see how that actually pans out. And I'd like to, maybe that's why this is taking them a month, because it's just like how long he has to coddle Seymour's balls for before he'll finally actually say, okay, then fine. Yeah, we'll see.
Point in our position at that time. But again, you know, the bigger issue, irrespective of state recognition, is the core challenge is that Hamas has to release hostages. Israel needs to be respectful of civilians and get assistance in there and actually pull back from military action. That's how you get peace. And so, you know, as a government, we're not pro-Palestine or pro-Israel. We're just pro-peace. And so we'll work our way through a state recognition question. There's lots of pros and cons of how you might go about doing that and when you might do that. But equally, our major event has to be continuing to make sure there's a ceasefire in that place and that peace breaks out.
The thing about that statement, because like I kind of would identify with that being pro-peace. We talk about the innocent lives that are being lost, but if you're pro-peace, but you're in a position to either uplift the ones that are being smashed to bits, you know, in other words, undermine the perpetrators in this, but you choose not to, you're really pro-peace. Because I would say the pro-peace position would be to sit alongside the people who are most vulnerable in this and the ones who are getting killed in their tens of thousands. And that would seem to be a pretty clear case if you were pro-peace. Because if it is a fight going on, it's like 99% from one way and 1% from the other. So if you're pro-peace, surely you should be sitting with the 1% retaliatory fire or whatever than the 99%. That would make sense.
It would make sense and it would be logical. But remember, we're talking about Christopher Luxon. So not really a thing, Tim, is it?
And he's not very good at this.